Welcome back and good evening. If you've just joined us, you're welcome to stream live on our website or engage us on our social media platforms. Our top story this half hour, the ANC Youth League has endorsed Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma as its preferred candidate to lead the party after the elective conference in December. The divisive ANC slates are clearer now more than ever. The ANC Youth League's endorsement of Dlamini-Zuma yesterday came after the MKMVA and the ANC Women's League announced their preference of her to take over from President Jacob Zuma. Meanwhile, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has received endorsement from SANCO, COSATU and the SACP, and these developments bring to the fore the dangers of slate politics, which was seen at the last elective conference in Polokwane, and it remains to be seen if the ANC can do away with slates for the sake of uniting ahead of the 2019 elections or face the possibility of a breakaway party. And here's the Youth League's proposed leadership slate for the ANC elective conference. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma for president and David Mabuza for deputy president, Ace Magashule for secretary general, Natim Twetwa for national chairperson, and Maite Nkwane Mashabane for treasurer general, and Jesse Duwate as the deputy secretary general, and Figile Mbalula as the second deputy secretary general. And meanwhile, here's a touted Ramaphosa slate that is doing the rounds on social media. Cyril Ramaphosa for president, Dr. Zweli Mkhize for deputy, David Makura for secretary general, Enoch Gondongwane for treasurer general, and Vuyiswa Dulelo for deputy secretary general, and Thandi Modise for national chairperson. And meanwhile, the ANC slate raised the following key questions. Should the ANC officially declare the succession race open? And does slate politics widen division or promote open contestation? Can the ANC scrap slates and unite on a compromise candidate? And would losers likely form a new party after the elective conference? And joining us in studio is Professor Siposie Tsepo Khadima, political analyst. Good evening to you, and you at home, good evening and welcome as well. We have Thabo Mutle from the ANC Youth League as an NEC member. I'll start with you, Prof. Is it perhaps time that the ANC does away with this mechanism of electing leaders? Because with every elective conference, it just becomes murkier and messier.
Well, I think the ANC is often informed by what's happening on the ground. As a party, you would like to have control, but you get to a stage where you realize that your attempts are not working. So what we are seeing here is that it doesn't matter what the ANC is saying. You already have a race that has already been declared. You must also understand that you also have alliance partners who are not members of the ANC, who cannot be disciplined by the ANC, who have actually decided to say, we are going to run with our person. And they've been running with that person. If you look at the last 4 weeks, you've had COSATU making its position very clear much earlier from last year, and they have been consistent. So effectively, they've already started the race. You've also had the same expression coming from some members of the SACP who have also declared who they want. Then you also have certain groupings, but by and large, you find that these groupings are not within the ANC. So despite the fact that the ANC has tried to almost bring order, the order is not possible. But what they've tried is to come up with a nicer way of handling that, to say, in as much as we have no control, we should actually say it's okay for people to discuss names and subject them to a litmus test, which they say the litmus test will be looking at the document called The Eye of a Needle, which talks about what a good cadre is, the leadership and all those issues. So this is one way in which they are saying we are trying to respond to the pressure. They have no control. And I think the sooner they fast track, I think the process is already there. So I don't think it's a case of whether it's open or not. It's already open. And what the Youth League has actually done is to say we can explain ourselves, because there's also organizational independence, even though they must submit to the discipline of the ANC, to say we see a campaigning that is taking place, and it is from one side. So what we are going to do is to disrupt that monologue, to say there is only one leader or one grouping, to say there is a perspective that is different. But they've gone even further to say instead we'll actually bring a lineup of people we think should be considered for position of leadership in the ANC.
Yeah, well, would you say developments have been unconventional or unorthodox, if you will, in the sense of the deputy generally would succeed as the president of the ANC? In this case, we see NDZ 17 coming up stronger, and with the support of the Youth League and the Women's League as well.
Well, historically, the position of president has always been contested. There is nowhere historically where the deputy ever automatically became the president of the ANC, because after all, there wouldn't be a need for election if that was the case. Now, the reason why you have election is because there will be contestation. There might be one nominee, but yet that nominee still has to be voted in. So that position has always been contested. And I think those that have tried to advance an argument that by one being deputy president, by that automatically they can ascend to the president's position, they will not be able to hold course with that argument because it's not backed up by any historical facts whatsoever. But when you look at the way it is now, it should not surprise us that things are what they are right now. Because if you go back to Polokwane was a watershed conference. And one of the key decisions that, or resolutions that were taken by that conference was to say that the African National Congress is the center of power, or the party is the center of power. Which, by the way, I hasten to add that the ANC did what Congress Party of India had done 50 years earlier. 50 years earlier, in terms of, if you look at 2007, 50 years earlier from that time, Congress Party of India was grappling with exactly the very same issue on whether or not the party was the center of power, or you had to have people who are in government as prime minister then to run with their own program of government, and then the party had to be left to its own devices. However, when they made that decision that the party is the center of power, they also came up with the principle of democratic centralism. And therefore means that as long as we have these two principles, center of power being the party, democratic centralism, it is therefore not possible to not have slate politics. I just don't see how you can avoid them. Because it therefore means when you say the party is the center of power, democratic centralism, it therefore means that the leadership that you are electing has to be the leadership that can have collegiality amongst themselves. Now, in an event where you say the party is the center of power got collective leadership, and then the people are not compatible, you're going to end up with chaos. It is for that reason that we are seeing slates, and each faction that is contesting for this election will of course have their own slate based on compatibility, that you can ensure that collegiality does go on. But what we are also seeing in terms of the leagues on one hand, that by the way our provinces, they can send a delegate to be able to elect, and then the alliance partners who do not have a seat at the table as far as electing the leadership is concerned, but they have also sought to run their own campaign. We are seeing the hardening of attitudes. And I can tell you now, the hardening of attitudes is one of the deadliest diseases known to man.
I beg your pardon. We have on the line Thabo Mutle, ANC Youth League NEC member. Thabo, thanks so much for joining us. This slate practice, do you think it's more divisive for the party, especially under the banner of uniting a year of OR Tambo? Is it helping the party to clean up house?
Thanks, Cindy, and good evening to viewers. No, I don't think it is divisive. As we know, we are marching towards the Congress. So in every Congress, we are expecting that there will be divergence views, preference of leadership. Therefore, that does not necessarily necessitate that there are division. It's just that there are different preferences of leadership. Therefore, the ANC Youth League had its own meeting over the weekend from the 10th to the 11th, over 2 days, where it discussed amongst other things. The main discussion was not around leadership. We discussed our policy positions, where the meeting was extended to regional chairpersons and secretaries to formulate policy position towards the upcoming policy conference of the African National Congress. And we further said we discussed the leadership that we think will be able to implement and agree with the policy positions that we hold as the African National Congress.
All right, please hold on the line. I just want to get a reaction from the panelists. When you deny that there has been factionalism, and this has been for a while now within the party, saying, no, there's not such a thing, and eventually it came out, the horse had bolted in KwaZulu as well, and now the two-man race that we're seeing is based on factions, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes the word factionalism raises a different flavor. But what we should accept is that the ANC, by its very definition, is a broad church with a number of tendencies. And some tendencies will be closer to each other. So what you have here is an interplay where you find people who are, for instance, if you have people who are socialist and some who are communist, they might find common cause, even though they may say there's a difference between them. And you have some people who are capitalist and others who are social democrats and who are constitutionalists who may find that there's a commonality. I mean, there was the very same thing that Sepo was saying, that there are some ideological, there's what you call ideological affinity, that even though it is not the same, but it's closer to. If you take, for instance, the Black Consciousness movement and the Pan-Africanist movement, there you could find common cause easier there than if you bring a capitalist in that space. So the notion of faction is much more stronger, but we must accept that there are tendencies. And if you're going to have a leadership, you also want to make sure that the people who are going to be there must be able to see things from the same sheet and be able to sing the same hymn. So it is that which ultimately brings what appears to be, or what is presented as a slate. It is more about, do we see things from the same angle, or can we find common cause? But there are some people who you cannot find common cause with, and hence you see...
Yeah, but that's the concern that we would have as South Africans, because this is likely going to be the government that we're sitting with in 2019, be it not an outright majority, that the compatibility of the top six and the leadership needs to be matched in such a way that there isn't any unnecessary pettiness or friction when it comes to serving the people of South Africa.
Yeah, I think that's really going to be the new normal in our politics. And it's not only limited to ANC and the alliance partners. I mean, we're seeing the Democratic Alliance here. I mean, they right now, they just haven't got a ghost of an idea how they're going to handle factionalism within their own party. But factionalism by its very nature should not have a negative connotation, because it brings about and encourages contestation of ideas. And let the best ideas be the ones that are supported by the majority, because after all, that is what democracy is about. So you should have factions that are able to articulate their differing positions and how they would approach, both in terms of principle and in terms of style of approach on a matter. So it should not be negative. However, the manner in which they do it, their attitudes must not be so, or positions must not be so firmly entrenched. They must not be cast in stone to the extent that even post the elective conference, people are still holding on to their positions. And by the way, this is what former President Thabo Mbeki warned about on the eve of the Polokwane conference in 2007, where he said, yes, it's contestation, but we should not hold so fast to our positions that post the conference, we are still holding on fast to those positions. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem to have followed his own advice after he lost, that there were people who held to their own positions, and then, of course, we had the emergence of COPE. So the question is that now, 10 years later, are we going to see the repeat of the Polokwane episode, whereby already now you find that people are holding on so fast to their own ideologies, even the alliance partners are now so determined that they must say it is our way or the highway. Yeah. And historically, I would think that the highway is going to be the acceptable route than their way, because it will just lead to dysfunctionality.
Yeah, Thabo, your response to that there is a grave danger to the ANC potentially creating another splinter party if members are so entrenched in their preferred candidates?
Look, factionalism, it's bad, but what organizations need to do is to first acknowledge that there is factionalism within the parties. in particular the ANC, then you can be able to chew that disease once you accept. Now, we do not encourage, because democratic centralism, it's very clear that, and it is not limited to only the conference, but once we go to a conference and a decision is taken in that conference as to which leadership must then take the burden from Comrade President Jacob Zuma, we should all support the elected leadership marching forward to 2019 election. We are not encouraging any splinter, but the splinter will mean that people are bigger than the ANC. They do not want to support others when they are given responsibility to lead. It will mean that the leadership will end with them. Therefore, it will be very incorrect. In the ANC, we've got a succession plan. We are not like any other, most of the liberation movement in Africa. Therefore, we know for a fact that after every 5 years, there will be new leadership ascending to the position of responsibility. Therefore, it can be correct when a particular leader that you do not support, when he ascends. For an example, us as the ANC Youth League, we have taken a posture that we support Nkosazana to be the president and Ace to be the secretary. If Cyril emerges as the president in that conference, we will continue to support Cyril because he's the member of the African National Congress. And that's what all members of the African National Congress are supposed to do.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but that's not generally the attitude, because even now, in terms of appointment, you'll know that in the corridors or the echelons of power, you're told this is a Thabo Mbeki boy or this one is a Jacob Zuma boy, that it's not something that's just going to disappear. The thing is, what are the worst case scenarios in terms of encouraging Slate politics that could affect the ANC 2019?
Well, I have no doubt that this coming process is going to be messy. If you look at the postures that have been taken, I mean, what we would have liked is what Tsepo was raising, where there's a contestation of ideas. But what you see on the table, you do not hear people talking about ideas. You hear them talking about how much they are better than so-and-so, even when so-and-so is not even running for presidency. So you see a process that will lead to the hardening of attitudes. And sometimes when you listen to members of the ANC, you actually get the sense that they hate each other, that they don't wish each other well. So there is less about contestation of ideas, but more about the hardening of attitudes. And it is not helped because you also have alliance partners who have also taken a position, and they have also decided to besmirch somebody who is now guilty by association with certain people. And this is the thing that is a danger. But at the same time, we should also accept that the ANC as we know it, and this is where the ANC must also stop romanticizing about the past. We are living in a different condition of democracy, and the way people can choose to be with other people, but where there's also benefits to taking certain positions. So there's this notion of telling people about the leaders under conditions of oppression when the people had nothing to lose. Today, people have something to lose and they want to protect it. So they need to start fashioning the politics within the context of the democracy, within the context of freedom, not within the context of some wonderful time.
Are you saying maybe to neutralize the situation there should be a compromise candidate, Rekhadima?
Well, the question is that if you go for a compromise candidate, will that person be able to lead seemingly two disparate policy, ideology, positions within the same party? I think what you need, by the way, after all, leadership is influence, no more, no less.
Yeah.
If you are a leader in position and there's nobody who's following, you are simply taking a walk. It might just as well be a Sunday afternoon stroll. So you need to have people that are following, but they will only follow because of the influence that you would have and how you are able to articulate the vision of a better future. And I think what Professor Sepe is saying here, that we are seeing a lot more on style than on content, than on what really this particular leader stands for. You'll hear most leaders within the African National Congress talking about through the eye of the needle. But they haven't really, in a Twitter handle format, been able to define what through the eye of the needle really means. And the reason I'm saying that, that's how in the United States they run a poll, by the way, or rather when you're campaigning for presidents, they write on the back of a business card all the things which disqualifies the other person from being president of the United States and all the things that qualify you to be the president of the United States. That means your message has to be succinct, has to be very clear, but it can't be verbose or it can't just be hyperboles. What does it really mean when you say through the eye of the needle? How does it relate to somebody who's in Ngwavuma or Malamulela or Soweto or Tembisa, my hometown? So I think that's the difficulty that the current leadership is sitting with. So whoever that's going to, uneasy is going to be the head that will be wearing the crown in December. Will that person be able then to influence the whole membership of the ANC to be able to follow a well-articulated vision? And that we still wait to see what will happen. But the policy conference that's upcoming does not give me any indication that we are going to see content. I think we are going to continue to see style, and therefore the ANC is going to itself as a party, I think, battle, as is the Democratic Alliance, by the way. So I think 2019, if anything, we'll see voter apathy, and the coalition government will not be as a result that people moved from one party to the other. They will just be too confused because all the parties are not able to communicate in clear tones their message and their vision of a better South Africa.
Yeah, and Thaba, just put us into your confidence. How are leaders evaluated? I know it's the branches are the backbone, as it were, of the leadership in terms of appointment and elections. But how do you evaluate at least the two candidates we have, and also with the name of Dr. Matthews Posa being thrown into the fray as well as a potential candidate?
Yes, we use that document called Through the Eye of the Needle to look at the leaders who will lead us from time to time, depending on the material condition at that particular time. Now, I think even the colleague there is misquoting or out of context because it is utilized by the structures everywhere, whether at the national level, the provincial level, at the branch level. That document remains relevant. We need to, from time to time, elect leaders that will be equal to the task. In this case, we are also addressing the issue. We know that we are from a patriarchal society, and Nkosazana as a woman, the ANC has never been led by a woman before. So we deem it necessary at this point in time that since we have declared, the ANC has declared this year the year of OR Tambo, the year of unity. OR, some of the things that OR stood for, it was women emancipation. Therefore, we deem it is very necessary for us to support that call made by the Women's League. Therefore, I don't think but the colleague there is correct with the emphasis that he's making with regard to Through the Eye of the Needle. We know how to use that particular document within the guidelines and the confines of the Constitution of the African
Nation. Professor Siep, are you sold? Are you convinced?
No, I think
Excuse me.
in the end, the ANC has always declared itself to be the leader of society. What South Africa says is that these are our problems. Don't tell us how much you hate each other. Tell us how you're going to solve our problem. So I think we as society and members of the ANC need to start asking deeper questions. When somebody says, I want to lead, they must ask, what is the solution that you're bringing on the table and what is your understanding of a problem? So you have people who are now even quarreling around the notion of radical economic transformation. Some of them, instead of telling us what it is, they tell us what it is not. And yet the ANC has a statement that it has uttered to say, when we talk about radical economic transformation, we are saying it is this and it is informed by this particular understanding. And if people want to depart from there, they must actually tell us what it means and what does it mean for ordinary people people who are unemployed. What does it mean about the economic inequalities? So what we don't hear is the solution to the future. So if the ANC wants to be relevant, it must respond to the concerns of the people. The concerns of the people are you have a high unemployment, you have poverty, you have economic inequalities, you have racism, you have patriarchy. This, we need somebody who's going to be a provider of a vision and a solution, not somebody who's going to say, this is what I'm not. We want to know what you are.
Sorry, Professor Siapa, we're sitting a couple of months before the elective conference in December. And do you think, is there a strategy in your view, Rekhatima, very briefly, in resolving the issues within the party, restoring it to its former glory?
I think they're going to go into this conference with difficulty. But we want to respond to the issue of patriarchy and bring about gender equity or parity thereof. The Professor Faust, who was the first woman president of Harvard University, protested that she's not the first woman president of Harvard University, but she's president of Harvard University. So one should only hope that should Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma ascend to the position of president of the African National Congress, she must be president of the African National Congress. She must be judged on her capacity and not on the basis that she's a woman. But of course, we need to bring about gender equity and parity. But once she's in that position, she mustn't be the first woman president. She must be president so that she can be able to lead.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thanks indeed, Professor Sipho Siapa, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, and Thabo Motle is the ANC Youth League NEC member. You at home, thanks indeed for watching. We're back after a short break and taking a look at the Competition Commission. They've been very busy in recent months, and this time around probing the pharmaceutical companies and the collusion activities there. We're back after this.